Breaking: cartel infrastructure uncovered beneath a U.S. mansion.
At 4:32 a.m. Columbus, Ohio. Temperature sitting at 11 degrees below zero. The kind of cold that makes metal stick to skin and breath hang in the air like smoke. The streets were dead. Traffic lights blinked yellow over empty intersections. A thin layer of frost covered parked cars that had not moved in hours. No sirens. No flashing lights. No warnings. 73 federal agents moved simultaneously across 6 locations. FBI, DEA, ICE, DHS tactical units, SWAT teams from 3 counties. They did not announce themselves. They did not negotiate. They hit doors at the same moment, coordinated to the second, because the targets had spent years learning how to disappear when they sensed trouble coming. The first team struck a medical supply warehouse on the eastern edge of the city, a building registered as a non-profit distribution center for low-income healthcare products. On paper, it shipped bandages, syringes, and sterilization kits to underserved clinics across rural Ohio. In reality, it had not shipped a single legitimate item in 19 months. Agents breached the loading dock doors with hydraulic rams. Flashbangs echoed through the concrete corridors. Within 90 seconds, they had secured the main floor and discovered what the paperwork never mentioned. 17 pallets of sealed containers marked as saline solution. Inside each container, vacuum-wrapped bricks of fentanyl powder, 4,300 pounds total, enough to kill every person in Ohio twice over. The second team entered a community health clinic in a neighborhood that had waited 8 months for a single pediatrician. The clinic billed Medicaid for over 6,000 patient visits per week. Agents found no patients, no doctors, no nurses, just empty exam rooms with lights left on, computers logged into billing software, and automated systems pushing claims into state databases every 11 minutes. The third team hit a residential property in an upscale suburb. A 5-bedroom house registered under a housing development LLC that traced back through 4 shell companies to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Inside, agents found 3 industrial money counting machines, still warm from use. They found $4.2 million in cash stacked inside a basement safe. They found encrypted hard drives locked behind biometric security. And they found something else. A steel filing cabinet bolted to the floor. Inside were 47 passports, all belonging to individuals who had entered the country through sponsored migration programs. All reported missing within 6 weeks of arrival. All presumed to be working somewhere in the network, their locations unknown, their debts unpaid, their freedom gone. The fourth team breached a bar in downtown Columbus that operated as a front for money laundering. The fifth team secured a trucking depot that had altered shipping manifests to move cartel product through way stations without inspection. The sixth team entered the personal office of the target no one expected to fall. State Senator Marcus Whitfield, 53 years old, 3-term incumbent, chairman of the Ohio Senate Health and Human Services Committee. A man who had spent 2 decades building a reputation as a defender of working families and a champion of healthcare access. A man who appeared at ribbon cuttings, delivered passionate speeches about protecting the vulnerable, and quietly collected advisory fees from 19 nonprofit organizations that existed only to steal. When agents entered his office, they found him sitting at his desk, calm, still, as if he had been waiting. He did not resist. He did not speak. He simply watched as agents bagged documents, disconnected servers, and photographed the room where billions of dollars had been authorized to disappear. Ask yourself this. How does a man spend 20 years in public service and end up at the center of a cartel operation? The answer is not complicated. He did not stumble into crime. He built a doorway and held it open. By 6:14 a.m., the seized evidence was already arriving at the FBI's Cleveland field office, a converted industrial building with basement floors designed for sensitive material analysis. The cyber forensics team had been on standby for 11 hours, waiting for the hard drives that would either confirm or collapse the entire investigation. The first drive unlocked within 40 minutes. Standard commercial encryption. Nothing sophisticated. Nothing that suggested the user expected to be caught. What appeared on the screen changed everything. A network diagram. 43 nodes. 19 nonprofit organizations. 12 shell companies. 8 offshore accounts. 4 logistics contractors. And one code name at the center of every financial pathway. Project Heartland. The name appeared on internal memos, payment authorizations, and routing instructions. It appeared on shipping manifests that moved product from the Mexican border to Ohio warehouses. It appeared on Medicaid billing summaries that generated false claims worth over $40 million per month. It appeared everywhere, and it always pointed back to the same authorization signature. Senator Marcus Whitfield. According to the documents, Project Heartland was not a charity initiative. It was not a healthcare expansion program. It was a systematic operation designed to transform Ohio into a protected transit corridor for the Sinaloa cartel. A corridor where shipments moved without inspection, where money flowed without oversight, where anyone who asked questions was labeled a threat to vulnerable communities and quietly removed from their position. The financial architecture was elegant in its simplicity. Medicaid funds were claimed for services that never occurred. The money was routed through non-profit organizations that paid consulting fees to shell companies. The shell companies transferred funds to offshore accounts. The offshore accounts purchased product from cartel suppliers. The product was shipped through logistics contractors with falsified manifests. The product arrived in Ohio. The product was distributed. The profits returned through the same channels. The cycle repeated. In 34 months, the network extracted $2.8 billion from public systems. Not stolen in the traditional sense. Invoiced, approved, paid, as if it were legitimate business. And the Sinaloa cartel did not need to fire a single shot. They did not need to bribe border agents or threaten witnesses. They simply needed one man with a committee chairmanship and a talent for making oversight disappear. This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion. And the operation had just begun to reveal itself. At 5:47 a.m. the following morning, a federal command center activated inside a secured facility outside Cincinnati. The room was built for crisis coordination. Reinforced walls, redundant communications, screens covering every surface. And on the largest screen, a digital map of Ohio glowing with 43 red markers. Each marker represented a confirmed node in the Project Heartland network. Clinics, warehouses, trucking depots, shell company offices, residential properties, distribution points. Every location connected to the same financial architecture. Every location scheduled for simultaneous action. The operation was designated Case Cascade. Over 1,000 federal agents were deployed across the state. FBI field teams, DEA tactical units, ICE enforcement squads, DHS investigators, SWAT teams from 7 counties, Black Hawk helicopters positioned at 3 staging areas, armored vehicles pre-positioned near high-risk targets. The coordination required 17 separate agency briefings and a federal judge willing to sign warrants at 3 a.m. without asking questions. At 6 a.m. exactly, the operation launched. Teams hit a pharmaceutical distribution center in Toledo that had shipped over 2 million fentanyl pills disguised as generic painkillers. They seized the pills. They seized the shipping records. They arrested 4 employees who claimed they thought they were handling legitimate medication. Teams hit a trucking company in Akron that had modified 18 vehicles to carry concealed compartments. Each compartment was designed to hold up to 300 pounds of narcotics. Each vehicle had made an average of 14 cross-country trips in the past year. Each trip had passed through weigh stations without inspection because the stations were mysteriously closed for maintenance whenever the trucks arrived. Teams hit a chain of laundromats in Cleveland that processed over $6 million per month in cash deposits. The laundromats were registered as minority-owned small businesses. They received tax incentives. They received community development grants. They received protection from audits because questioning their finances was labeled as discriminatory. Teams hit a farmhouse in rural Pickaway County that contained a drug superlab hidden beneath a grain silo. The lab was producing methamphetamine at industrial scale, 400 pounds per week. The product was packaged, labeled as agricultural supplies, and shipped through the same logistics network that moved the fentanyl. Teams hit a mansion in the hills outside Columbus that belonged to a man named Ricardo Fuentes, a logistics coordinator who had entered the country on a business visa 11 years earlier and never left. Fuentes was the primary liaison between the Ohio network and Sinaloa cartel leadership in Mexico. He handled shipment scheduling, quality control, and dispute resolution. When agents breached his property, they found him attempting to destroy a satellite phone that contained direct contacts to cartel commanders. By noon, the operation had executed 31 arrests, seized over 6,000 pounds of narcotics, recovered $53 million in cash and assets, dismantled 4 drug production facilities, shut down 11 shell companies, and frozen accounts containing over $140 million in laundered funds. The underworld took more damage in 6 hours than it had in the previous 6 years. And the damage was only beginning. The servers seized from Senator Whitfield's office contained more than financial records. They contained communications, internal memos, meeting notes, and a document that investigators initially believed was a forgery because no one could be that careless. It was a spreadsheet, organized by date, amount, and recipient. A payment ledger that tracked monthly disbursements to law enforcement officials, judges, and regulatory personnel across Ohio. Not bribes in the traditional sense. Advisory fees, consulting payments, speaking honorariums, community partnership contributions, language designed to make corruption look like civic engagement. The ledger identified 84 individuals who had received payments over 34 months. Deputy police chiefs, county sheriffs, health department inspectors, Medicaid auditors, juvenile court judges, state legislators. Each payment was linked to a specific service: a delayed inspection, a dismissed complaint, a reassigned investigation, a favorable ruling. One entry stood out: a series of payments totaling $840,000 to a man named Deputy Chief Franklin Reeves of the Columbus Police Department. According to the ledger, Reeves provided advance notification of scheduled raids, patrol grid modifications to avoid certain shipment routes, and internal leak detection to identify officers who might be asking too many questions. When agents reviewed patrol records, they found the evidence. On 14 separate occasions, patrol units were reassigned away from locations where cartel shipments were scheduled to arrive. On 6 occasions, officers who filed suspicious activity reports were transferred to administrative duties within 30 days. On 3 occasions, internal affairs investigations into network-connected properties were closed without explanation. Reeves was arrested at his home at 7:22 a.m. He was still wearing his uniform. He said nothing as agents placed him in handcuffs. His wife stood in the doorway, watching, not understanding, not believing, not able to reconcile the man she married with the man being led away. But Reeves was not the largest name on the list. The largest name belonged to Judge Patricia Moreno of the Franklin County Common Pleas Court. According to the ledger, Moreno had received over $1.2 million in payments disguised as contributions to a legal education foundation she controlled. In exchange, she had dismissed 17 cases involving network-connected defendants. She had sealed records that would have exposed shell company ownership. She had issued rulings that blocked federal subpoenas and delayed search warrants until evidence could be destroyed. Moreno was arrested in her chambers at 8:45 a.m. She was wearing her robes. She was preparing for a morning docket that included 2 cases involving defendants now in federal custody. She asked if she could change clothes before being transported. The agents said no. In the end, 31 individuals were arrested: 14 law enforcement officers, 4 judges, 3 state legislators, 6 regulatory officials, and 1 sitting United States senator who had spent 2 decades pretending to serve the public while quietly selling access to a drug cartel. The badge will be rebuilt from the ground up, but the rebuilding will take years, and the trust may never fully return. The investigation did not stop at Ohio's borders. It could not, because the network was never designed to be contained. According to recovered logistics files, the Project Heartland operation was part of a larger distribution strategy that connected Ohio to cartel supply chains across the Midwest and beyond. The state was chosen for 3 reasons: central location with highway access to major population centers, weak regulatory oversight due to budget cuts and political interference, and a political protector willing to ensure that certain questions were never asked. The trucking contractors moved product through Indiana, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. The shipping routes connected to port facilities in Cleveland and Toledo that received containers from vessels originating in Mexican coastal cities. The financial channels linked to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Panama, and Dubai. At peak operation, the network was capable of moving 4,000 pounds of fentanyl per month into American communities. Enough to supply street-level dealers across 12 states. Enough to generate over $400 million in annual revenue. Enough to kill tens of thousands of people who would never know the name Marcus Whitfield or understand how their suffering was connected to a committee chairmanship in Columbus. The final document recovered from the seized servers was labeled Phase 3 Expansion. It outlined plans to establish permanent logistics infrastructure across Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, to acquire additional trucking companies, to establish new shell nonprofits, to recruit additional political protectors at the state and local level. The document included a timeline. Within 5 years, the network would control enough distribution capacity to supply 40% of the Midwest fentanyl market. Within 10 years, it would be self-sustaining, generating enough revenue to survive any single arrest or seizure. Within 15 years, it would be institutionalized, embedded so deeply in legitimate business structures that dismantling it would cause economic damage to communities that depended on its jobs and investments. The system was not being infiltrated. It was being redesigned for the cartel future. The human cost of this operation cannot be measured in dollars or seizure weights. It is measured in obituaries, in emergency room admissions, in children who will never see their parents again. In 2024, Ohio recorded over 4,800 overdose deaths. Fentanyl was present in 83% of them. Behind each statistic was a person, a son, A daughter, a parent, someone who made a mistake, or trusted the wrong person, or simply could not escape the addiction that had taken hold of their life. The fentanyl that killed them came from somewhere. It moved through logistics networks. It passed through warehouses. It was protected by people who knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway because the money was good and the oversight was weak. Marcus Whitfield did not pull a trigger. He did not hand pills to anyone. He simply created the conditions that allowed poison to flow freely into communities that trusted their government to protect them. The families who lost loved ones will never receive adequate compensation. The communities that suffered will never fully recover. The trust that was broken will take generations to rebuild. But the investigation has shown one thing clearly. Silence is not neutrality. Silence is permission. Every person who looked away when the numbers did not add up. Every auditor who accepted the explanation that oversight was discriminatory. Every official who took the advisory fee and asked no questions. They all contributed to the body count. Not through malice, perhaps, but through the quiet cowardice of pretending that someone else would handle the problem. Power does not always need violence. Sometimes it only needs silence and ambition. Senator Marcus Whitfield was arraigned in federal court on January 22. He faces 47 counts including racketeering, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, wire fraud, and human trafficking. If convicted on all charges, he faces a maximum sentence of 3 consecutive life terms plus an additional 400 years. He pleaded not guilty. His attorney released a statement calling the charges politically motivated and promising a vigorous defense. The statement did not mention the $2.8 billion. It did not mention the fentanyl. It did not mention the passports found in the filing cabinet or the people who carried them. Judge Patricia Moreno was arraigned on 19 counts including obstruction of justice, bribery, and conspiracy. Deputy Chief Franklin Reeves faces 23 counts including corruption, obstruction, and accessory to drug trafficking. Ricardo Fuentes has been indicted on cartel conspiracy charges and faces potential extradition proceedings. The investigation remains active. Additional arrests are expected. Additional charges will be filed. The network is damaged, but not destroyed, and the cartel will adapt. They always do. If you are still watching, know this. This story is not about Ohio. It is about what happens when oversight fails. When accountability becomes optional. When powerful people decide that their ambition matters more than the lives they are supposed to protect. It is about the choice every society faces. Do we ask hard questions, even when the answers are uncomfortable? Or do we accept the easy explanations and hope someone else deals with the consequences? The people who built this network bet everything on silence. They bet that no one would look closely at the numbers. That no one would question the nonprofits. That no one would connect the shipments to the deaths. They bet that compassion could be weaponized and oversight could be dismissed as discrimination. For 34 months, they were right. And then someone looked. If you believe stories like this matter, if you believe transparency protects people instead of hurting them, if you believe accountability is not cruelty but responsibility, then share this story. Let others see what silence allows. Let others understand what oversight prevents. Tap like if you want more investigations like this one. Comment expose if you believe corruption should be dragged into the light regardless of who it protects. Subscribe if you want to know when the next operation unfolds, because there are more networks, more protectors, more systems that rely on silence to survive. Where are you watching from? And what do you think matters more? Protecting comfortable narratives or protecting the truth? This story is fictional. It is dramatized for storytelling purposes. But the issues it reflects are real. Political corruption exists. Cartel infiltration exists. Oversight failure exists. And the only defense against all of them is a public willing to pay attention and ask the questions that powerful people hope will never be asked. Awareness is where accountability begins. And accountability is where justice lives.